The case of Sir James Saunders. It was a raw, unforgiving December evening, typical of London's brooding disposition, when the doorbell of 221B Baker Street announced an intrusion upon our customary tranquillity. I had been perusing a volume of forgotten verse, whilst Holmes, hunched over his chemical apparatus, pursued one of his interminable and often malodorous experiments. The air, already thick with the pungent aroma of carbolic acid and other noxious vapours, seemed to vibrate with a nervous energy that was not entirely of Holmes's making. "A client, Watson, and one of some urgency, if I am not mistaken," Holmes remarked, without so much as glancing up from his retort, his eyes fixed upon the bubbling concoction. The cab had stopped precisely 2 minutes longer than necessary at the corner, indicating a certain reluctance on the part of its occupant to present herself, and the faint scent of lavender, mingled with the unmistakable tang of city soot, suggests a lady of refinement, albeit one now in the throes of considerable distress. Before I could express my astonishment at his customary prescience, our landlady, Mrs. Hudson, ushered in a woman whose appearance confirmed every syllable of Holmes's swift deduction. She was of middle age, elegantly attired in a dress of dark silk, now somewhat dishevelled, and her face, though patrician in its features, was etched with an expression of profound anxiety, her eyes red-rimmed as if from recent weeping. "Mr. Holmes," she began, her voice a reedy whisper, "I am Lady Margaret Ashworth, and I have come to you in desperation. My brother, Sir Reginald Ashworth, is dying, and no one, not even the esteemed Sir James Saunders, seems able to comprehend the nature of his affliction." Holmes at last pushed aside his chemicals, wiping his hands on a cloth with a deliberate air. "Pray, be seated, Lady Margaret. The symptoms, if you please, and the circumstances surrounding their onset." Lady Margaret wrung her gloved hands, her gaze darting between Holmes's impassive face and my own more sympathetic countenance. "It began some 6 months ago, shortly after Sir Reginald's return from his expedition to the Dutch East Indies. He had gone, you see, to study the native flora, a lifelong passion. At first it was merely a general malaise, a lassitude, a loss of appetite. But then the skin—" She shuddered visibly. "The skin began to change. Patches of pallor, then a curious reddening, followed by a scaling, almost a flaking. And then lesions, ulcers, Mr. Holmes, which refused to heal." "Ulcers?" Holmes's eyebrows rose fractionally. "And the colour, the texture?" "Horrible, Mr. Holmes. A greyish yellow at first, then deepening to a reddish brown, with a foul odour, a putrescence that even the strongest disinfectants cannot entirely mask. His face, his hands, his limbs, they are all affected. He suffers greatly, and the pain, he says, is excruciating. He has lost sensation in some areas, yet in others he cries out from the torment." "And Sir James Saunders, his diagnosis?" "Sir James has been most attentive, spending hours at Ashworth Hall. He has prescribed various unguents, tonics, and even changed the very air in Sir Reginald's chambers, but nothing avails. He speaks of a rare tropical disease, an unknown pathogen perhaps, resistant to all conventional treatments. He has counselled absolute isolation, fearing contagion. Sir Reginald, poor man, is now confined to his rooms, seen only by Sir James and his loyal valet Jenkins. Even I am permitted only fleeting glimpses through a glass screen." "Isolation, you say?" Holmes mused, his fingers steepled before him. "A rather drastic measure, even for a suspected rare disease. What, pray tell, is Sir James's exact opinion on the matter of its contagiousness? He is gravely concerned, Mr. Holmes. He speaks of its aggressive nature and its unpredictable course. He has even suggested that Sir Reginald might need to be moved to a remote, purpose-built facility for the term of his illness, to protect society, as it were. I could see the wheels turning in Holmes's mind. The cursed rotting disease, the unknown pathogen, the isolation, all the hallmarks of a profound medical mystery, or perhaps something more sinister. And how does Sir James account for his inability to stem the progress of this malady, given his considerable reputation? Lady Margaret sighed heavily. He professes utter bewilderment. He is a man, I assure you, of the deepest ingrained medical knowledge and authority on tropical maladies, having practiced for years in colonial India. Yet he seems utterly defeated by this case. Indeed, sometimes, Mr. Holmes, I detect a certain weariness in him, a profound sadness that goes beyond the mere burden of an intractable case. Holmes's gaze sharpened. Weariness? Or something else? A fear, perhaps? I cannot say, but I confess, Mr. Holmes, it is his very bafflement that has driven me here. He is so eminent, so skilled, that his failure seems unnatural. And the disease itself, so grotesque, so relentless, reminds me of ancient tales of curses, of vengeful spirits from those foreign lands. She shivered. Superstition, Lady Margaret, is a poor substitute for observation and deduction, Holmes said, though not unkindly. However, your instincts, though perhaps misdirected, may yet point towards an underlying truth. Watson, our hats and coats. We shall call upon Sir James Saunders at Ashworth Hall without delay. Ashworth Hall was a grand, if slightly melancholic edifice, nestled within extensive grounds in the outskirts of Kensington. The December fog, though not as dense as a pea-supper, lent an ethereal, oppressive quality to the already sombre scene. The windows of the mansion were largely shuttered, and a general air of disuse seemed to cling to the very stonework. We were met at the door by Jenkins, the valet, a gaunt man with eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and suppressed anxiety. He led us through dimly lit corridors, past shrouded furniture and the ghostly portraits of forgotten Ashworths, until we reached a study on the ground floor. Sir James Saunders rose to greet us as we entered. He was a man of impressive stature and dignified bearing, his silver hair neatly combed, his features strong and intelligent, yet marred by deep lines of fatigue around his eyes. His tweed suit, though impeccably tailored, seemed a size too large for his somewhat diminished frame. "Mr. Holmes," he said, extending a hand that was surprisingly cold to the touch. "And Dr. Watson, of course. Lady Margaret has informed me of your intended visit. I confess I am at a loss as to what assistance you believe you can render in a purely medical matter, however grave." His tone was polite, but tinged with a distinct note of professional reserve, almost an impatience. "My dear Sir James," Holmes replied smoothly, "Lady Margaret's concern for her brother has led her to seek every conceivable avenue of solace. While I'm no physician, my investigations often touch upon circumstances which, though presenting as medical phenomena, possess a more criminal or mysterious foundation." Sir James gave a humourless chuckle. "Criminal? Mr. Holmes, Sir Reginald suffers from a wasting, pustular affliction that is slowly consuming him. There is nothing criminal in the work of a bacterium or fungus." Perhaps not directly, Holmes conceded, his eyes scanning the room with swift, almost imperceptible movements. But the human hand can guide such things, can it not? Or mimic them with frightening accuracy. Sir James's face tightened almost imperceptibly. I assure you, Mr. Holmes, there is no such guiding hand here. This is a cruel stroke of nature, a consequence of venturing into the wild, untamed corners of the world. He gestured towards a large map of the Dutch East Indies hanging on the wall, filled with annotations and red lines. Sir Reginald brought it back from Sumatra, I have no doubt. May we see Sir Reginald? Holmes asked, cutting to the chase. A flicker of hesitation crossed Sir James's features. He is very weak, and the sight, it is not for the faint of heart. Moreover, as I explained to Lady Margaret, there is a serious risk of contagion. I cannot, in good conscience, permit direct contact. A glimpse through the screen, then, as Lady Margaret describes, Holmes pressed. Observation, even at a remove, can be profoundly illuminating. Sir James sighed, a sound of resignation. Very well, follow me. He led us to a large bedchamber, its windows heavily draped, plunging the room into a perpetual twilight. A strong, sickly sweet odour, overlaid with the sharp scent of antiseptic, hung heavy in the air. In the centre of the room, a magnificent four-poster bed was draped with what appeared to be fine gauze curtains. Behind these, and a further glass screen, lay a figure barely discernible in the gloom. Sir Reginald is asleep, Sir James whispered, his voice hushed. The sedation is necessary for his comfort. I strained my eyes, trying to pierce the various screens. What I saw sent a chill down my spine. The man on the bed was a mere shadow of what a baronet should be. His face was waxen, almost translucent, and on his exposed hands, arms, and even peeking from beneath the edge of the sheet, were grotesque lesions, angry red patches, surrounded by raised purplish scales, some weeping a thin yellowish fluid. His skin appeared to be sloughing off in places, revealing raw, inflamed flesh beneath. It was indeed a horrifying spectacle, reminiscent of the ancient scourges of humanity. Horrible, I murmured, genuinely appalled. Holmes, however, remained utterly impassive. He merely peered through the glass for a long moment, his gaze unwavering, taking in every detail. I noticed him lean in, almost imperceptibly, as if trying to catch a scent or a sound beyond my own limited senses. He seemed particularly interested in the sheets and the pillow, and the small table beside the bed, upon which various medicines and unguents stood. After a few minutes, he turned away. Thank you, Sir James. This has been instructive. Back in the study, Sir James resumed his seat, looking profoundly weary. You see, Mr. Holmes, there's no mystery here, only tragedy. A man consumed by a rare and relentless affliction. Indeed, Holmes said slowly, his voice laced with an unusual thoughtfulness. And yet certain aspects of this tragedy strike me as peculiar. The very uniformity of the lesions, for instance, and the precise rate of decay. Nature, Sir James, for all its cruelty, rarely operates with such a methodical hand. Sir James bristled. Are you suggesting, Mr. Holmes, that I am somehow mistaken in my diagnosis, or worse, derelict in my duty? I am suggesting, Sir James, that the data presented by Sir Reginald's condition does not perfectly align with the natural course of any known tropical disease, however rare. There is a precision to its progression, a specific pattern of tissue damage which suggests not a random attack by microorganisms, but a targeted application of an external agent. Sir James Saunders's face, already pale, now drained of all colour. His eyes, usually sharp and intelligent, widened with something akin to panic. "External agent? Mr. Holmes, what in heaven's name are you implying?" "I am implying, Sir James, that Sir Reginald Ashworth is not suffering from a tropical malady. He is being slowly poisoned, or rather externally corroded, by a caustic chemical agent designed to mimic the effects of leprosy or a similar devastating skin disease. And the isolation, the constant sedation, the secrecy, they all serve to prevent any other medical professional from examining him too closely, from recognizing the artifice." A tense silence descended upon the study, broken only by the distant clatter of a hansom cab. Sir James half rose from his chair, his hands gripping the arms, his knuckles white. "This is outrageous, Mr. Holmes. A monstrous accusation." "Is it?" Holmes's voice remained calm, almost conversational, but his eyes were like steel. "Consider the facts. The peculiar odour, not entirely of decay, but with a faint underlying chemical tang, reminiscent of a certain class of dilute acids, perhaps an organic acid or a mild alkali. The loss of sensation in some areas, yet excruciating pain in others. This is precisely what one would expect from repeated low-level chemical burns, where nerve endings are gradually destroyed but the surrounding tissue remains highly inflamed. And the isolation, Sir James, the absolute control over Sir Reginald's person to ensure that this agent can be applied regularly, unobserved. Who, pray tell, has such privileged access?" Sir James sank back into his chair, defeat etched on his face. His carefully constructed composure had crumbled. He stared at Holmes with an expression of profound despair. You have seen too much, Mr. Holmes." "I see what is there to be seen, Sir James," Holmes replied, softening his tone slightly. "And I observe, not merely look. Now, the question is, why? You are a man of unimpeachable reputation, a physician of the highest standing. Why would you be complicit in such a monstrous deception?" Sir James buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. "Blackmail, Mr. Holmes. Pure and simple. I have been driven to the precipice of professional ruin, and now perhaps to prison." I stared aghast. "Blackmail? By whom, Sir James?" He lifted his head, his eyes haunted. "Silas Croft. He was a junior chemist in my laboratory many years ago when I was still establishing my practice. A brilliant mind, but deeply resentful, constantly feeling overlooked. He was dismissed for insubordination and a petty theft of laboratory supplies. But before he left, he stumbled upon something from my past." Sir James paused, gathering his thoughts. "It was early in my career, during a particularly grueling internship. I made a grave misdiagnosis, Mr. Holmes, in a case involving a prominent family. A child suffering from a relatively common but poorly understood neurological disorder was instead diagnosed with a much more severe, incurable condition. The family, acting on my prognosis, made irreversible decisions regarding the child's care, choices that, in retrospect, were tragically wrong. The child eventually recovered, but not without immense suffering, and the family was ruined by the scandal and the expense. I, in my youth and inexperience, managed to cover up my error, to deflect blame. I was desperate to protect my budding career, my reputation. Croft, it seems, discovered the original lab notes, my early reports, the true damning evidence of my misjudgment. He kept them, waiting for the opportune moment. And the opportune moment presented itself with Sir Reginald's illness? Holmes prompted. Yes. Croft knew of Sir Reginald's exotic travels and his particular anxieties about contracting some virulent foreign disease. He approached me a few months ago, demanding a substantial sum, threatening to expose my past if I refused. He insisted I follow his precise instructions regarding Sir Reginald. He wanted me to diagnose a debilitating, outwardly visible illness that would force Sir Reginald into seclusion, to create the perfect illusion of a slow, creeping death. He promised me he would provide the medication and instruct me on its application, ensuring no other physician could intervene. He threatened to go to the press, to the medical board, to ruin my life and legacy entirely if I did not cooperate. I was terrified, Mr. Holmes. Terrified of the public shame, of seeing everything I had worked for crumble. And the medication? Holmes inquired. A specially formulated caustic agent, Sir James confessed, his voice filled with self-loathing. He provided it in small, unmarked vials. I was to apply it nightly, a thin layer, to Sir Reginald's skin, particularly while he slept. It was designed to mimic the necrotic effects of leprosy, to slowly but surely erode the dermal layers, creating those grotesque lesions and the horrifying stench. He assured me it would not be fatal, merely disfiguring and isolating. He claimed he intended to extort a fortune from Sir Reginald's estate once the poor man was sufficiently weakened and distraught, perhaps even to coerce him into signing over property. He implied there was some deeper personal grudge against Sir Reginald, but he never elaborated. Silas Croft, Holmes mused aloud, pacing the study. A brilliant mind, you say, but twisted, and a grudge against Sir Reginald. This is a crucial thread, Sir James. Do you know of any prior connection between Croft and Sir Reginald Ashworth? Sir James shook his head. I genuinely do not. Croft was merely my lab assistant. Sir Reginald, to my knowledge, had no direct dealings with him. Unless it was something from years ago, perhaps when Sir Reginald was involved in his early ventures, before he inherited the baronetcy. He funded several scientific enterprises, small start-ups that sought to innovate in various fields. Precisely, Holmes declared. A scientific rivalry, a dismissed employee, a patent dispute, a slight that festered into a deep-seated desire for vengeance coupled with financial opportunism. This provides a more robust motive for Croft than mere opportunism. Now, Sir James, tell me, where does Croft receive his payment? And where does he prepare these noxious chemicals? I meet him twice a week, Mr. Holmes, usually late in the evening, in a secluded alleyway behind the old Smithfield market. He delivers the next batch of vials, and I give him a payment, always in cash, from my own dwindling savings. Sir James pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his brow. He has an establishment there, a dilapidated old apothecary shop that he uses as a laboratory. It's called Croft's Elixirs and Potions, though it sells little more than patent medicines and quack remedies now. Excellent, Holmes said, a spark of his usual brilliance returning to his eyes. The pieces fall into place. Watson, our pursuit begins in earnest. That night, under the oppressive blanket of London's fog, Holmes and I set out for Smithfield. The area was a labyrinth of narrow, ill-lit streets, permeated by the mingled odours of slaughterhouses, coal smoke and damp earth. Croft's Elixirs and Potions was a grim two-storied building, its windows grimy, a faded sign barely legible above its sagging door. A faint, acrid smell, reminiscent of Sir Reginald's chambers, emanated from within. We staked out the premises from the shadows of a nearby doorway, Holmes a silent, unmoving sentinel, his eyes constantly scanning, taking in every detail. Hours passed, marked only by the mournful chime of a distant clock tower and the occasional clatter of a passing cab. At precisely 11:30, a figure emerged from the depths of the alleyway, a small, hunched man with spectacles glinting in the gaslight. He carried a leather satchel and moved with a furtive, nervous energy. "Croft, I presume," Holmes whispered. "He is likely on his way to meet Sir James, or perhaps to tend to other nefarious business." "How can you be certain, Holmes?" "The precise timing, Watson, and the fact that he has paused to adjust his spectacles and wipe his hands upon a rag before venturing forth, as if cleaning himself of the residues of his work." Holmes allowed Croft a reasonable lead, then motioned for me to follow. We shadowed the chemist through the twisting streets, a silent presence in the gloom. Croft walked with an agitated shuffle, constantly glancing over his shoulder as if expecting pursuit. He led us to a grimy tenement building in a particularly unsavoury part of Westminster, where he disappeared inside. "He lives here, it seems," Holmes murmured. "This complicates matters slightly. We cannot simply burst in without warrant. We need more definitive proof, direct evidence of the agent itself, and the means of its creation." We returned to Croft's elixirs and potions, Holmes's mind already formulating a plan. "Watson, tomorrow morning I shall require your assistance in a delicate manoeuvre. We shall pay Croft a visit under a pretext that will allow us temporary access to his laboratory." The following morning, Holmes, disguised as a prosperous but rather eccentric botanist seeking rare chemical reagents for a new plant preservative, presented himself at Croft's shop. I, in turn, adopted the role of his taciturn assistant, carrying a heavy satchel that ostensibly held samples, but in reality contained tools for Holmes's more covert operations. Croft, small and sallow-faced, with thin, restless hands, eyed us suspiciously over his counter. His shop was dimly lit, filled with shelves of dusty bottles, strange herbs, and the peculiar aroma of old chemicals and stale tea. "Mr. Croft, I believe?" Holmes boomed, affecting a jovial, slightly theatrical air. "Professor Alistair Finch, at your service. I hear you are a man of profound chemical knowledge, adept at producing the most exotic of compounds. I am in desperate need of a specific reagent, a highly volatile organic acid, to preserve a rare specimen of Sumatran orchid." Croft's eyes narrowed. "Sumatran, you say? I dabble in such things, Professor, but my work is specialized." He seemed wary. "Indeed," Holmes pressed on, "and I understand you possess a remarkable facility, a laboratory beyond the common ken. I would be most grateful if you would allow me to observe your methods to ensure the purity of the compound. Naturally, a generous fee would be rendered for your time and expertise." Holmes produced a crisp £10 note. Croft's avarice, it seemed, outweighed his suspicion. His eyes lit up at the sight of the money. "My laboratory is not for public viewing, Professor. However, for a gentleman of your discerning taste, and for such a fee, perhaps a brief glimpse." He led us through a back door, past a grimy curtain, into a cramped, chaotic space. It was a chemist's den, filled with alembics, retorts, Bunsen burners, and shelves laden with bottles of various liquids and powders. The air was thick with a cocktail of chemical smells, some familiar, others acrid and unknown. "The Sumatran orchid, you say?" Croft asked, trying to sound knowledgeable. "Perhaps a dilute solution of trichloroacetic acid, or even a more potent carbolic derivative?" Holmes feigned enthusiasm, distracting Croft with an intricate, entirely fabricated discussion about the specific molecular structure required. While Croft, flattered, launched into a long-winded explanation of his supposed expertise, Holmes, with astonishing speed and dexterity, began his true work. His eyes darted about, his hands moved with lightning precision. He palmed a small, stoppered vial containing a cloudy liquid from a shelf, replacing it with an identical but empty vial he had secreted in his coat pocket. He scraped a minute sample of powder from a tray with a specially prepared nail file, and even subtly dipped a small square of litmus paper into a beaker of clear liquid on the workbench, observing the immediate sharp shift in colour. Within 10 minutes, Holmes had gathered what he needed. "Magnificent, Mr. Croft, truly magnificent. Your knowledge is astounding. I shall consider your proposal for the reagent. My assistant and I must now depart." Back in the relative sanity of Baker Street, Holmes immediately set about analysing his haul. He uncorked the vial of cloudy liquid, and the same sickeningly sweet yet acrid odour I had detected in Sir Reginald's room filled our own. "This, Watson," Holmes announced, holding the vial to the light, "is our culprit, a potent yet slow-acting caustic agent. Its particular composition, I believe, is designed to mimic the histological effects of certain necrotic diseases, but with a controlled rate of tissue damage. The pH paper, as you saw, indicated a strong alkaline, or perhaps a concentrated acid, cleverly buffered to appear benign until it contacts organic matter over time." He then placed a tiny speck of the powder under his microscope. "And this, I believe, is the active ingredient, a crystalline structure, highly corrosive. Croft, it seems, has refined his art to a terrifying degree. He is not merely applying a common acid. He has formulated a specific compound to achieve precisely the effect he desires, that of a slow, rotting death without immediate fatality, thus prolonging the torment and extending the period of blackmail." "But Holmes," I ventured, "what is his motive against Sir Reginald? Blackmail against Sir James is clear, but why torture Sir Reginald?" Holmes smiled grimly. "That, my dear Watson, is the final piece of the puzzle. I have spent the last few hours poring over old newspaper archives, focusing on Sir Reginald Ashworth's early career. And I found it. A small article buried in the financial section of a defunct scientific journal dating back nearly 20 years. Sir Reginald, then a young, ambitious entrepreneur, had invested heavily in a promising new chemical process for preserving organic matter, a process patented by a brilliant but penniless young chemist. The venture failed spectacularly, primarily due to Sir Reginald's subsequent withdrawal of funding and his decision to pursue a more lucrative, unrelated project. The chemist, deprived of resources and support, saw his invention languish and his career prospects vanish. His name, Watson, was Silas Croft. The pieces clicked into place with a chilling finality. Revenge, I breathed, a long-held bitter vengeance, combined with the opportunity for financial gain through Sir James's predicament. "Precisely," Holmes confirmed. "Croft saw his chance. Sir Reginald's trip to the tropics provided the perfect cover story for a mysterious disease. Sir James Saunders's past indiscretion made him a pliable tool. Croft could torture Sir Reginald slowly, ruin his health, isolate him from society, and at the same time bleed Sir James dry of his savings. What is our next move, Holmes? We catch him in the act, Watson. Tonight, Sir James's unwitting complicity must end, and Croft's reign of terror must cease. That evening, a little before midnight, Holmes, Watson and Inspector Lestrade, apprised of the full gravity of the situation and thoroughly convinced by Holmes's unshakable logic, lay in wait within Ashworth Hall. We were concealed in a rarely used antechamber adjacent to Sir Reginald's bedroom, from which we had a clear view of the passage. Sir James Saunders, pale and trembling, but resolute in his decision to cooperate, was to feign his usual late-night visit to Sir Reginald, but this time he would not apply the agent. Instead, he would wait for Croft. The tension in the air was palpable. The grand old house was utterly silent, save for the creaking of old timbers and the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. At precisely 1 o'clock, a faint sound reached us, a muffled click, followed by the soft padding of footsteps. A figure, dark and indistinct in the gloom, moved furtively down the corridor towards Sir Reginald's room. It was Silas Croft. He carried a small bag, no doubt containing the vials of caustic agent. He entered Sir Reginald's chamber without a sound, his movements precise and practised. "Now, Lestrade," Holmes whispered, his voice sharp with command. We burst into the room. Croft, startled, dropped his bag with a clatter. His eyes, wide with terror, darted between Holmes, Lestrade and Sir James, who stood by the bed, his face a mask of sorrowful resignation. "Silas Croft!" Lestrade bellowed, his powerful voice echoing in the room. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Sir Reginald Ashworth and the blackmail of Sir James Saunders." Croft made a desperate lunge towards the window, a desperate bid for escape. But Lestrade, a man of surprising agility despite his bulk, intercepted him with practised ease. The chemist struggled violently, cursing and spitting, but he was no match for the seasoned detective. Holmes calmly retrieved the drop bag. Inside, amongst other innocuous items, lay several small, stoppered vials, filled with the same cloudy, acrid liquid we had analysed earlier. The evidence, Lestrade, is all here, and the victim, though currently insensible, will provide a most compelling testimony when he recovers. Sir James Saunders, his face still etched with the horror of his complicity, approached the bed. "The poor man," he murmured, his voice thick with remorse. "What have I done?" "You were coerced, Sir James," Holmes said, his voice tinged with a rare compassion. "A man of your standing, faced with the ruin of your life's work. The pressure was immense. However, your cooperation in this apprehension and your immediate cessation of the treatment will weigh heavily in your favour." Croft, now subdued and handcuffed, glared at Sir James with a venomous hatred. "Traitor! You swore you wouldn't betray me. He stole my invention, Saunders. He ruined me. He deserved every agonizing moment. And you, Croft, will pay for your twisted revenge and your criminal actions," Lestrade declared, dragging the struggling chemist from the room. In the ensuing days, the true nature of Sir Reginald Ashworth's cursed rotting disease was brought to light. With the cessation of Croft's nightly applications of the caustic agent, and with proper, genuine medical care, Sir Reginald's condition slowly, painstakingly began to improve. The horrific lesions gradually healed, leaving behind scars, but not the promised grotesque decay. His isolation ended, and the fear of contagion, a fear so carefully cultivated by Croft, dissipated like morning mist. Sir James Saunders, though spared public disgrace thanks to Holmes's discreet intervention and his own swift cooperation, nevertheless resigned from his prominent medical practice. He left London seeking atonement, I believe, through quiet work in a charitable clinic in a remote country village. His reputation, though not publicly tarnished, was privately burdened by the knowledge of his lapse, a secret he would carry for the rest of his life. Holmes, as ever, regarded the conclusion of the case with his customary blend of satisfaction and philosophical detachment. "Another instance, Watson," he remarked one evening as we sat by our fire, "of the human mind, when warped by avarice and vengeance, capable of devising tortures more insidious than any natural disease. Croft, a man of undoubted intellect, twisted his gifts into instruments of cruelty, and Sir James, a man of profound medical knowledge, allowed fear and the spectre of past mistakes to compromise his ethics." "It was a truly horrifying ordeal, Holmes," I replied, stirring my tea. "The thought of Sir Reginald's prolonged suffering, the deliberate deception." "Indeed, Watson. It serves as a stark reminder that the most dangerous pathogens are often not found in distant jungles, but within the dark recesses of the human heart, capable of manifesting in forms that challenge even the most deeply ingrained medical knowledge." Holmes leaned back, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "But fortunately, Watson, they rarely escape the keen eye of observation or the rigorous application of deductive reasoning." He picked up his violin, and soon the melancholic strains of a Bach fugue filled our rooms, a testament to the complex, often tragic, yet ultimately rational world that Holmes strove so tirelessly to comprehend. If you enjoy our work, please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is in the description.